Will you please pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be holy and acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. In 1962, James Baldwin published an article in the New York Times Book Review entitled, "As Much Truth as One Can Bear." In it, he describes what it takes to be a good novelist. He says that it simply involves attempting to tell as much of the truth as one can bear, and then a little more. I know no better description of Baldwin's own writing than this. His relentless commitment to exposing the myths of American innocence and the monstrosity of its legacies in the most searing and precise prose. Baldwin's definition of good writing, of course, transcends novelists. The greatest thinkers, activists, artists, teachers, preachers attempt to tell as much truth as one can bear, and then a little more. The most transformative communities and movements seem always to push at the boundaries of the amount of truth one can bear, and then push a bit further. For people of faith, the Hebrew prophets' proclamation of God's justice rolling down like waters, Mary's declaration of God throwing down the powerful from their thrones and lifting up the lowly, and Jesus' teachings to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Well, these are the very epitome of telling as much of the truth as one can bear, and then a little more, a lot more, in fact. Today's gospel passage places front and center another bold truth teller. In a brief encounter with the disciples and Jesus, the Canaanite woman reveals extensive truths. In one of the most riveting, discomforting exchanges in all the Gospels, we must learn, alongside Jesus, to bear this woman's truth and to be transformed by it. It's not clear how she knew Jesus, but somehow the news had reached her that this prophet and healer, a rabbi from Nazareth named Jesus, had traveled outside Jewish Galilee into her neck of the woods, into the Gentile region of Tyre and Sidon, the equivalent of what one commentator called pagan land. Maybe what she heard about him was true, that this man had a divine anointing, that he touched the untouchable and cured the uncurable, that he walked among the common people, bringing hope and healing in his wake. Maybe, just maybe, she stood a chance of having her daughter healed. But there were lingering doubts within her. Would he have mercy on her, a Canaanite woman? She knew well the ancient hostilities between Jews and Canaanites, and that old prejudices die hard. In Jewish eyes, Canaanites had a dubious religion. They worshipped idols and false gods. They were the descendants of Canaan, the son of Ham, whom Noah had cursed. They were the original inhabitants of the Promised Land, old enemies of Israel, whom Joshua had been ordered to annihilate. A prejudice against the Canaanites would have been wafting in the cultural air that Jesus breathed, imparting a perhaps subtle but surely pervasive message that they were less than us. To the ethnic prejudice working against her, add the gender component. No doubt she is well aware of her precarious position as both an ethnic outsider and a woman, appearing alone, with no husband or other male presence, before a group of men. I imagine her as an older woman, widowed perhaps, whose adult daughter has suffered for decades, too debilitated to leave home, tormented by forces that have put a stranglehold on her life. Over these long years, this mother has tried just about everything, every remedy, every herb, incense, sacrifice. She spent her last denarius on local healers to no avail. Some of my Tower League friends are fond of reminding me, Rev Lynn, this is not my first rodeo. In other words, they've seen a lot, they've done a lot, and they've learned a lot along the way so that not much surprises or flusters them. I get the feeling for this Canaanite woman, this is not her first rodeo either. She is tired of the daily fight for recognition and healing for her child, but she is fierce and undeterred. She is done dancing around the point, done with all the niceties and the cajoling smiles. She knows what she wants, and she shouts for it. Have mercy on me, son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon. Have mercy on me, son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon. If you've ever been in the position of advocating for a long-sick child or aging parent or partner, and have come up against detours and dead ends of wrong or delayed diagnosis, of ineffective or too expensive treatment, you understand this Canaanite woman's cry. If you've known the helplessness of witnessing a loved one tormented by physical, emotional, or spiritual pain, or you've known this for yourself, you understand her desperation. And if you've lived under the threat of being dismissed or of receiving subpar care because of your ethnicity, your gender, your race, or your age, you understand this woman's plea. You know her cry as you know her own. In our current pandemic, her reality is especially palpable. Every Sunday in our community prayers, we pray for those who have been victims to COVID-19. We have a moment of silence to honor them, to pray for them. The silence reflects innumerable cries for healing and mercy of people like this Canaanite woman seeking healing for their loved ones. As a faith community, we hold these cries as holy, and we commit to care and pray for the sick and bereaved in our midst. And we also commit to advocate for a more humane, just healthcare system in which no one is reduced to begging for care, in which no one has to shout to get the decent treatment they deserve, in which no one's ethnicity or gender or race or age or economic status determines their quality of care. Have mercy on me, son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon. The Canaanite woman puts it all on the line, risking the sting of rejection for the possibility, however small, of alleviating her child's suffering, only to be met by deafening silence. Jesus simply does not answer her at first, a disregard that must have cut her to the quick. The disciples interpret Jesus' non-response as evidence that he must share their annoyance with her. So they urge Jesus to dismiss her, send her away, for she keeps shouting after us. In so few words, we hear centuries of bias, implicit, unexamined, unchecked, underwriting the disciples' cool dismissal of this foreign woman. Best to just usher this loud, disruptive woman along and get back to the more important people. Notice, These men are more troubled by the loudness of her voice than by the truth of her claim. They are more upset by her shouting than by her suffering. The disciples' response rings eerily familiar, doesn't it? I hear echoes of it whenever people are more upset by shattered windows than by shattered lives, more bent out of shape by broken curfews than by broken bodies, more disturbed by the fact of protest than by the content of what is being protested. It is very familiar to me, a familiar posture of white America, to focus on stopping the shouting, but not the suffering behind it. An orientation absorbed early, which dictates that any disruption to the status quo must be met with the restoration of order. It is more important to quiet the messengers than address the message, more important to shut up the truth tellers than to confront their truth. It is often subtle, but ever present, the prioritization of order over justice. Women especially are never to make a scene. So part of the journey of repentance, at least for many of us in dominant groups, is unlearning this will to suppress the shouting, to unlearn the disciples' response, to build up toleration for righteous disruption, and to listen, really listen for what is being shouted. What is the actual message? What is the suffering that needs to be addressed? Thankfully, Jesus does not heed the disciples' advice. He does not send the woman away, and rather than trying to shut her up, he engages her. But his response isn't exactly the compassionate inclusion we might expect. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he says. A pretty conventional response. In many ways, it is true. Jesus and his disciples are Jewish, so it makes sense that their primary focus would be people within their own tradition. But the woman will not be deterred so easily. She persists, this time kneeling at his feet and insisting, "Lord, help me." In harsher terms this time, Jesus reasserts his exclusionary message. It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Ouch. Did he just call the Canaanite woman a dog? We could perform interpretive gymnastics to try to save Jesus from this unflattering depiction. And trust me, many commentators have tried, saying, oh, he was just joking. He actually calls her a puppy, not a dog, or he was just testing her faith. But it seems that there's no good way of getting around the fact that in this particular instance, Jesus has some growing and learning to do, as a cultural chauvinism rears its ugly head here. I know this may make us uncomfortable. If Jesus is God incarnate, why would he need correction? Why would he need to learn or unlearn anything? But I don't think this makes Jesus any less God's Son, any less the incarnate one. It means he is fully human and fully divine, that he, like all humans, grew up in a particular culture exposed to its particular prejudices. So when the Canaanite woman uncovers these prejudices and the harm they cause, when she calls Jesus back to the Hebrew God who welcomes the alien and the outsider, the God of the Moabite Ruth and the Canaanite Rahab, Jesus has a choice to make, to close ranks or to open up. He chooses the latter. recognizing, honoring, and being changed by this woman's great faith. And for a moment, she is a teacher to the teacher, a rabbi to the rabbi. That Jesus learns from her is not a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of his spiritual strength, that he allows himself to be changed, that he opens himself up to the wisdom of a foreign other. If Jesus had been steeped in what we'd call now toxic masculinity, he would have felt threatened by this woman's reprimand, made insecure by her power. He would have resorted to shaming and blaming her, dismissing her as nasty, aggressive, bossy, or too loud. But instead, he dares to feel the weight of her truth. Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Her retort must have cut him to the quick. And he responds not by giving her crumbs, but by lavishing her with loaves. The woman's daughter, it says, is instantly healed, fully restored to health. Ultimately, the Canaanite woman and her daughter get seats at the table, not scraps from the floor. Toward the end of that 1962 essay, As Much Truth as One Can Bear, Baldwin writes, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." The Canaanite woman confronts the disciples and Jesus with what needs to be changed. That is the residual bigotry lacing their inherited worldview. The disciples do not want to face it. Send her away. Jesus faces it and is changed. As Christ followers, we too have choices to make when faced with more truth than we can bear. Discomforting truths about ourselves, our families, our communities, our legacies. Will we go the way of the disciples and seek to suppress and send away hard-to-bear truths and discomforting teachers? Or will we have the courage of Jesus to face them and be changed? The great faith of the Canaanite woman teaches us that there is quite enough room at the table, enough bread for everyone to have loaves, not crumbs. There's enough love and redemption to go around. Thanks be to God that she has told as much truth as one can bear and then a little more. May we be changed by facing her.